Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be covering another adaptation, and this one is called, or they are called Xylem and Phloem in plants. And I wrote a little thing that says nature straws for plants, because that is essentially what Xylem and Phloem do in plants. They allow plants to move water and nutrients like food, glucose, around its body using these sort of like tubes or straws. So let's take a look.
We could just say movement of water and minerals and movement of glucose and amino acids, but this is science, and so we like to have special terms to describe these processes. In this three-part video, we are going to look at the transport systems in plants for moving food, water and minerals around. We have a beating heart and circulating blood, but what do plants do? Cut a plant open and it doesn't bleed, so what happens instead? Plants have their own systems. They have a xylem, which moves water and solutes from the roots to the leaves, and a phloem, which moves glucose made in the leaves by photosynthesis and amino acids to the rest of the plant. Here are the xylem, and here are the phloem. Notice how the arrangement is different in the stem and the roots. The xylem and the phloem are found in groups called vascular bundles, and the position of these bundles changes for different parts of the plant. Both the xylem and the phloem are made up of rows of cells that form a continuous tube running the whole length of the plant. The xylem vessels are made of elongated dead cells that are impermeable to water and have walls containing lignin, a woody material. Because of this, xylem vessels are tough, which is why the vascular bundles in the roots are in the center. They help prevent the plant being pulled out of the ground. They are also more protected in the center, whereas the stem has to resist being squashed and bent, and so it has the vascular bundles nearer to the edge to give the stem strength and support. The phloem vessels are made up of living cells. They transport sucrose and amino acids up and down the plant.
That's glucose.
Depending upon where they are needed. Whereas in the xylem, the movement is just one way, from the roots up to the leaves. So we know that water and minerals go up the xylem, and amino acids and glucose go up and down the phloem. But how? In the second part of this video, we're going to look at the xylem and transpiration.
So let's look at that. Okay, so the first one is just introducing you to those two terms, xylem and phloem. And again, I want you to think of them as sort of like pipes or straws that run through plants. One carries water only, the xylem, and the water only goes up. And the other one carries nutrients, glucose, and other kind of vitamins and stuff, minerals that plants need. And it goes up and down and everywhere in the plant. But let's look more closely at xylem first.
So we know all about the xylem and the phloem. But now we need to know exactly how water and minerals move around the plant. You should already know about the structure of the leaf, but if not, watch this video to remind you. Let's have a look at transpiration and the xylem. Transpiration is the evaporation of water from the aerial parts of the plant, so the leaves and stems. By water evaporating out of these parts, mostly the leaves, a suction pressure is created which draws up the water through the plant. This is called the transpiration pull.
It's like
But what
sweating
exactly happens in
plants.
transpiration? Let's start at the roots. Roots have root hairs, giving them a large surface area for water absorption. Water passes in from the soil by osmosis, passing down the concentration gradient and into the root hair cell's cytoplasm, and then onto the xylem vessels. Water moves through the xylem vessels from the root to the stem to the leaf. Transpiration at the leaf causes a transpiration pull, and because water molecules are cohesive, water is pulled up through the plant in the transpiration
like sucking
stream.
up water.
As well as the leaf cells needing water for photosynthesis, water also keeps the cells turgid, which supports the plant. Inside the leaves, water is drawn out of the xylem cells to replace the water lost through transpiration. Because of the cohesive nature of water, which also pulls the water through the plant, as water leaves the xylem and moves into the leaf, it again pulls more water molecules behind it.
So water, let me get rid of that. Water loves water, and water molecules like to hang out and touch and be in a chain with other water molecules. So what happens on these leaves, it's like sweating in animals, is the sun hits it and water starts to evaporate off the leaf. Now, as that water is evaporating upward, because all the water molecules are connected like that, they're all going to be pulled up. And it's almost like you ran a string and pulled it up, and just pulled it out of there. That's what's happening to the water molecules. That's why when there's no sunlight, like a gloomy day, your plants don't lose as much water because you don't have as much evaporation of water coming off of the leaves. Again, this is sort of like the plant is sucking water up through a straw, and it goes upward from where the water came, the roots, and it pulls it up to the leaves. But once in the leaves, they're going to start to sweat or have transpiration. Instead of perspiration like humans, they have transpiration. It pulls those water beads all the way up. They go into the cells, but some of it also goes up into the atmosphere.
But it isn't just about water. The transpiration stream also transports mineral ions that are dissolved in the water from the roots to the leaves. The transpiration rate isn't constant. There are many different factors that affect it. The environmental factors are similar to those that make you sweaty. The temperature, the humidity, but also wind and light intensity. Then there are also physical factors, like does it have a waxy cuticle? How many stomata does it have? The nature of the guard cells, how large is the leaf surface area, and if the leaf is folded or flat.
So some plants do have like a wax cover. Well, that doesn't allow for as much water to evaporate away. Some of them have the stomatas, the openings, on the bottom only, so then it doesn't get hit by the sun. They don't lose as much water as well.
If the rate of transpiration increases, then the rate of water absorption by the roots needs to increase too. When water is scarce, or if the roots are damaged, the plant needs to reduce its transpiration rate by closing some of their stomata. There are guard cells on either side of the stomata, which regulate this. During daylight hours, chloroplasts produce sugar. This lowers the water potential of the guard cells, and they take in water by osmosis. This makes the guard cells turgid. Because the guard cells have a different cell wall thickness, when turgid, they bend more on the outside into sausage shapes. This opens the stomata, or the pore. Water can then be lost. During the night, all the sugar produced by the chloroplasts gets used up, so the water potential of the guard cells increases. More water, less sugar. The guard cells lose water by osmosis and become flaccid, and the stomata starts to close. This reduces water loss. So you now know about water movement through the plant, up the xylem, and pulled along the transpiration stream by the transpiration pull. And unsurprisingly, the plant has methods to control water loss by closing the stomata, based upon how flaccid or turgid the guard cells are. So in the final part of this video, we are going to look at the movement of glucose. After all, water may be important, but so is food.
Alrighty, so let's look at the other part of this, which is the phloem. So xylem moves water, phloem, and the water only moves up, but phloem moves food, the glucose, all over.
We're nearly there. We know how water moves up the plant in the xylem, with some minerals dissolved in the water. And we know that sugars move up and down the plant in the phloem. So all that is left to discover is exactly how the phloem works. We have the transpiration stream and the transpiration pool in the xylem, but there are no forces causing translocation, so something different must happen in the phloem. The phloem uses active transport to transport the food nutrients like glucose and amino acids around the plant. If you have forgotten how that works, watch our video on diffusion, osmosis, and active transport first. Glucose is made in the leaves by photosynthesis. Glucose is converted into sucrose in the leaves, which then enters the phloem vessels, as do amino acids. They then need to be transported around the plant to every single cell. The areas of the plant where sucrose is made are called the sources, and where they are delivered are called sinks. The phloem uses active transport because the sucrose moves against its concentration gradient, from the lower concentration, where it is made, to a higher concentration in the phloem cells. We don't need to know much about the phloem, but just be aware that they contain sieve tube plates, which the phloem sap travels through. The neighboring companion cells provide the sieve tube elements with the energy they need for the active transport. So in these 3 videos, we have learned all about the transport of water and minerals through the plant via the xylem. The transpiration of water in the leaf creates a transpiration pool, which almost physically pulls the water up through the plant. Just picture pulling water up from a well, and that is what is happening. We then also learned about the energy-driven translocation of sugars and amino acids in the phloem. Whereas water only travels in one direction, from the roots to the leaves, the sugars and amino acids are needed by every single cell, and so the phloem is multidirectional. But to achieve this, active transport and energy is needed.
There you go. So let's talk a little bit more about that in our presentation here. So again, what xylem does is that xylem moves, and let me move this out of the way. Xylem moves into the plant, whether it's a tree or grass or flower. It moves in from the roots. That's where they absorb water, and it goes up to the highest, even the highest leaves up here. Okay, so it only travels in one direction, travels up. So it says xylem, these are vascular tissue. It's just a straw that forms tubes, the straws, and it transports water from roots upward. So the water only goes upward in trees and plants, and that is in xylem. And again, here's this little diagram I thought gave some really good information. It only travels one way, up. It carries water and minerals, which would be like vitamins for plants. There are cells here. These are different cells, but there are no cells walled. They kind of all just make one big tube together so that water can travel through there. And then the outside wall that makes this tube or the straw is pretty tough. It's pretty hard. And that helps make the plant a little tougher, a little harder as well. If this got crushed really easily, then water wouldn't be able to go to the top of whatever plant that is, and that part will die. And you've probably seen before where some plant gets bent and then everything after that dies. And that's what happened. The xylem got crushed or broken, and now water can't continue to travel upward. Okay, and so here's just a picture that shows how those tubes actually look of xylem. Just a cross section. It's actually like little straws or pipes. So xylem, as we said, vascular tissue that forms tubes, transports water up from the roots all the way to the top. But as the plant gets older, you actually form rings. So this was like year 1. Then year 2, it grows some more of them. Year 3, more of them. And this ends up making what we call tree rings. And scientists can look at these rings and study them. If the ring, like right here, is really skinny, it probably means that there was a drought that year. There wasn't enough water. The plant didn't grow very much. This year looks like it was very wet. The plant got to grow a lot, grow lots of cells, and become bigger and thicker. The other word is phloem. So phloem, again, are the same. They're vascular tissue. That just means tissue that carries some kind of liquid, and it forms these tubes or straws. But what it moves is glucose. It moves glucose from the leaves to all the other parts of the plant. So remember, during photosynthesis, the sugars, the glucose is made here. But if we need glucose down here, well, it's gonna send, hey, we need it from that leaf, we need it to go down the stem, or we need it to go to the root because we're making more roots and we need energy down there. So here in the phloem, it goes both ways, up and down, and it can go sideways or across. Wherever it is the plant needs it, the phloem tube is going to go there and drop off this food to the new cells, new flowers, whatever it is that the plant is making. Okay, so there's the two side by side, again showing xylem only goes in one direction, which is up. Phloem can go up or down. Water only goes up. Food can go in any direction. And here's a cross section this way showing that the xylem is what you see pretty much in red here, and phloem is here. So xylem is a much harder material. And again, it's trying to stop this tree trunk or whatever this is from bending and breaking so water can continue to move. So it says about 500 million years ago is when the first plants kind of appeared on our planet. This one here that looks sort of just like a moss growing on the floor. This one places it at 440 million years ago. It says land plants appeared during the Adaptation period when life was diversifying rapidly, meaning life on our planet was changing. A lot of new types of plants and maybe ocean animals were just becoming more and more different species. But they were non-vascular plants, meaning they did not have xylem and phloem. There were mosses, liverworts that didn't have deep roots. So you can see there's no sticks or twigs or roots or anything to them. They got water just by water falling into it and being absorbed by the plant. So the adaptation advantage of having xylem and phloem is so plants could start to grow tall, to stand upright, to be taller than other plants, so then they can get sunlight over other plants. Okay, this is why xylem and phloem was a great adaptation. Before, everything just grew flat, but with xylem and phloem, it allowed plants to grow upward. And now water could be taken up as high as it could grow. Water could be taken all the way up there. Glucose could be taken anywhere the plant was growing, not just flat. And it also gave strength to the structure of the plant. So here we see some of the tallest trees on Earth, the redwoods and sequoias that are just tremendously tall. And it becomes an issue to, like here we see that if you're down here growing, you're not going to get much sunlight. If you're down here growing, not much sunlight. But the taller you can grow, you have the advantage then of being able to get more sunlight and grow better, deeper roots, everything. But sunlight is a key. But that's the difference. as plants changed and they started developing these straw-like structures that could suck water and let them grow taller, they did. And then other straws that allowed, and pipes that allowed food to move wherever the plant was needed, and it did. And that's what we have. The result are these humongous trees and humongous grasses that are very tall, not just the very flat type of organisms that existed initially. So that's why it was a good thing. So that's all for today. Please don't forget to complete any of your missing work by 6 p.m. because progress reports go out next week. Get that done. And thank you and have a great day.